welcome to the Marathon Medic podcast. My name's Amy and I'm a junior doctor and running coach based in London. In this series of the podcast, Running and Me, I'll be chatting with runners about why they started running and the benefits it's had to their health, both physically and mentally. On today's podcast, I'm speaking with Ben Cooper. He runs with Good Gym, which is where we met 4 years ago, and he's currently training for the London Marathon, for which he's raising money for Mind, the charity. Outside of running, Ben works at a mental health recovery college in South East London, and he's also studying at the University of East London to become a counsellor. So thank you for joining the podcast, Ben, and it sounds like you've got a lot going on at the moment.
Amy, it feels like I've got a lot going on at the moment.
So I'm going to dive straight in and just ask you what led you to get into running and how long ago that was.
Yeah, it's definitely been an evolution for me. I'm trying to recall when I first got into it now, it feels so long ago. But it was following a breakdown I had at work. It had been, I think I was in the fourth year of my post. I was working in civil service at the time, and it'd been quite a stressful time. Been lots of organisational changes, uncertainty, restructuring and the like. And I was working long hours. I started cutting out all the things that nourished me. And I kept telling myself, if I just keep working longer and longer, maybe I'll get on top of all the work. As Parkinson's law states, work expands to fill the time. So I never did get on top of it. And, when people talk about a breakdown, that's exactly what it is. I literally just, my body came to a halt and just said no more. And then what followed was quite a deep depression. I became very withdrawn, very low energy. I can't put my finger on what, when I decided to necessarily put on the trainers and start running, but I can recall I'd reached the point where even going to the corner shop was quite difficult, very anxious. But I put on the trainers and I literally would run around the block. So be it 5-10 minutes. It really started just running around the block quickly as possible so no one would see me, then back indoors. And I guess bit by bit as I got braver, I would go twice around the block, or I might even go further afield. Now, at this time, I didn't really know anything about running. I'd bought some trainers, be it from Sports Direct. I was probably running in a cotton t-shirt. When I look back now, where I reflect how far I've come, I kind of laugh at that person because, he was clueless. He was just running around. But it set the foundation what was to follow. And, when I think about change, when I think about personal change, it's quite invisible. You don't see yourself necessarily changing. But with running, you can really, you can make progress quite quickly. And I think at that time, and depression is associated with low energy and behaviour activation. And so it just, every kind of time, I went for a run, it just started to show me a bit more what was possible. Psychologically, when I went for an hour, so I went through the hour mark running, that was massive for me. But I did my, I started doing 10Ks, and I recall my first half marathon, and I went big. I went for the Great North Run. I don't know why. I was running money for the Samaritans. But again, I didn't have a watch. I was wearing a cotton t-shirt, shorts. I'd never done a half marathon before. It was kind of see what happens. But all the time I was kind of building evidence bit by bit, like, okay, maybe I am a runner. I think when I started, I maybe didn't call myself a runner, but bit by bit, I was finding the evidence, and yeah, this sort of, fits with all I've started to incorporate into my sense of self. Truth be told, when I joined Good Gym, one of the drivers for that was actually maybe connectiveness. I was probably feeling quite isolated and lonely, and running on my own. I really value it. I enjoy that headspace. that freedom that comes with it, just being alone with my thoughts. I feel like I can empty my head so I can allow other thoughts to come in. But it's hard to keep that motivation going. So I think joining a running group and running with other people really transformed my running. And also I was able to learn so much from others. And being part of, that sense of belonging that comes with being in a group really has kind of pushed me forward. And perhaps, when I didn't have necessarily the self-belief in myself, other people around me did. And it kind of, as I say, it's pushed me forward to do marathons and as you know, Amy, ultra marathons.
Yeah, our first one last year.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to know how long it took you to get from that point where you said that you would quickly run around the block without being seen to the point where you're turning up to a running club that you don't know anyone there and you're looking for people to run with, and how you changed during that period of time.
No, that's a good question. I think it's quite a long incubation period, and I think it took me about 3 or 4 times after signing up to Good Gym to actually go. I think there's a lot of nervousness and anxiety because there's a lot of uncertainty. What's involved? Who's going to be there? But I think probably a year, I would say.
Really?
A long time it took me to, because my confidence had gone through the floor. After my breakdown, was out of work for a while. So it was a very slow recovery. But I don't know what the tipping point was. I think I'd reached a point where think about kind of avoidance or approach motivation and, avoidance, want to keep yourself safe, hidden, away from danger. But then I kind of thought how good it could be, or, maybe this sense of maybe I'm missing out on stuff, and maybe that tipped the balance and thought, maybe I should, there's boldness in just trying stuff sometimes.
I think it's interesting as well because I've known you for so long and I've never heard that from you directly. I've always read it on maybe blog posts you've written, or you've mentioned it in passing, and I've never appreciated. I never realised it took you a year to come to Good Gym. You turned up and I just thought that was, you'd moved to the area and you were just trying to find a new club, and it wasn't a big deal. I never appreciated how much was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think sometimes often the first step is the hardest, just kind of turning up, if you like. Because as I say, I think, and I'm learning this in life, like dealing with uncertainty, trying to control what you can or influence what you can, or just accept what you can't control. Life will always be uncertain, but it's just believing in yourself. And I think what's really nice, or what I found with Good Gym, was that sort of acceptance. Yes, we might call ourselves runners, but I don't think there's any ego attached.
No, it's definitely the sense of community with that.
Definitely. So, as I said, when did I start calling myself a runner? Well, not immediately, but it took me a bit of time to, build the evidence.
And you're fundraising for Mind at the moment. So I looked at your fundraising page, obviously, and I've just got a quote that I've taken from it because I thought it was worded so well. When my life felt out of control, running gave me back a sense of agency. Anxiety and depression don't have identities of their own and get to run your life. Each step was making a decision to move forward, and with it I started to take back more control. Through running, I also learned to stay with uncomfortable feelings rather than flee from them or push them down.
Yeah, I'll stand by that. That's the reframe. I think that's the most useful way to think about some of my past experiences. And actually, it wasn't all suffering. There's a lot of learning there as well. And I think running, it's a gesture of self-worth towards yourself. Ultimately, I'm running for a good cause. I'm running for myself. If I can help others by doing that, then great. And I would argue with anyone, life is never 100% out of control. It might be 99% out of control. I accept that, but I would argue it's never 100% out of control. So work on what you can control, that 1%, and bit by bit, grapple back more control.
And I'm guessing that's your motivation at the moment for running for Mind in particular.
Yeah, I think it's such a good fit, running. and mental health, sort of mind, body connect, because we run in packs, and it's in our genes to run. So I think, sometimes there's that disconnect from our mind and bodies. We live too much in our heads, always be it fit, I often ask sometimes students, where do you locate yourself in time? And, some students have got one foot in the past, one foot in the future. So consequently, they're not living in the present. And I think something about running is it's very grounding. It brings you, it can be very present moment. And I think that's the goal in life, to live more authentically and be more present in your own life rather than regressing out of the present. But yeah, mind, it's going to be a very proud moment putting on the vest. I think they do a lot of important work, and it's tough out there, the environment, with the funding. We've got to do more, especially living in London, where we're building up, but actually we're becoming quite disconnected as a society. And what I think is really nice about the London Marathon, or marathons more generally, is it brings people together, be it runners, but also people on the street, spectators, neighbours who might not ordinarily stand together side by side. And you kind of you see the best in people at these sorts of times. And I've got to believe, doing the work I do, that most people are good, and I often talk about 3 degrees of influence. If you're kind to 3 people, and in turn each of those people are kind to 3 people, then you've got a kinder world. Gandhi talks about changing your world, and he said actually it just starts it starts much more locally. It starts by changing your community, and that's partly kind of what I like about Good Gym as well. That local activism is quite inspiring to know lots of people want to find a way to help. They're looking for that way. You just need to be kind of brought together, if you like.
And you're doing similar things at the Recovery College. So you just mentioned your students a few times.
Yes.
You've been working, as I understand, to get them into running.
Yeah, it's what I love about my job is the variety. So I work at a mental health recovery colleges. There's quite a number of mental health recovery colleges across the country, and it's working on this idea of personal recovery. So it's about giving people hope. That's often the starting point of recovery. Helping people make sense of their experiences so they can find meaning through it, and empowering people to take control of their lives. So it's much more than treating a mental illness. It's about helping people to live well and actually raise expectations of what they can achieve. So we offer a whole range of different courses to promote wellbeing, resilience. But more recently, as you know, because we did our sort of leadership in running fitness course together. So I took the idea to my manager. I said, look, I'd like to run a 0 to 5K group at the Recovery College. And he, to be fair, Ian's very open-minded. Said, if you can get the students and give it a good go, then we'll do it. We started last year. And I think there's a lot of misinformation about running. I think sometimes people get this idea that, they equate running for the bus, sprinting with running, and actually, or that it's going to be boring. But, you can introduce lots of games. And it's continued, and it's something I'm very proud about. It's something I enjoy immensely, be able to share my love of running with others. And we've had some really great successes in the group. So we've got people who may not have run for 10, 20, 30 years. We've got people who may be quite socially anxious, so they may be quite self-conscious about perhaps running in public. So we've got to overcome those barriers to participation. But, it's, again, I mentioned connectiveness, that finding a sense of belonging. There's a real power in running with a group. So, for example, I've had, some students she's been injured, but yet she's kept coming every week to support others because she's part of the running group.
I think that's so important within the Mental Health Recovery College, but also outside. I think a lot of our friends, when they get injured, that can be very isolating, actually. And it's not just the running element that we lose that social element, and still being able to come to events, volunteer at Park Run, cycle, if that's possible, is so important in keeping people connected, because you do create a lot of bonds, and seeing people going out and running and not being able to do it, it's not just
Yeah.
frustrating physically, mentally, it's you've just become, you lose that sense of identity a little bit, you
That's
lose
right.
your sense of place in that community. So it's great that she can still come along. And
Absolutely. I mean, when I mentioned identity earlier, it's important not to put all your eggs in one basket, because obviously, if you then have an injury, then where does that leave you who you are? But so in life, it's important to differentiate your kind of self-worth. It's have a lot going on. But I think what's great about running, as I mentioned, like in terms of like personal changes, I say to students, just give me 5 weeks, give me 10 weeks, and I will show you will make progress. I'm absolutely convinced. And actually, some of the students wear their injuries with badges of honour. I've got a sporting injury for the first time in my life. It's kind of like, wow, because you're gonna, when you're first starting out, you're gonna get maybe shin splints. You're gonna get sore calves if you've never run before. But there's got some lovely stories. I've got one student who he's borrowed shoes from his brother because he can't afford to buy his own trainers. So he's running in these second-hand trainers from his brothers, but he wants to come along. I've got other students who smoke or they lead chaotic lives, yet Monday morning they kind of find a way to get there every Monday morning, because it's important to them that they don't let the others down, and as they're part of the group. But it kind of, that you're right, they often I think in mental health, we talk about recovery, but we neglect this idea of social recovery, because actually what a lot of time people experience is a loss, some sort of sense of loss, be it a loss of a valuable role if maybe they lost a job, a loss of connectedness if they find themselves isolated, loss of self, if they just don't know who they are anymore. So running can help people come back to themselves, and can really raise expectations of what they can achieve. And then hopefully you can translate that into other areas of your life. If you can do, running, as you know, it's honest. I've reflected after races and thought, when I fell short, if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't put the training in. There's no dodging this. It's hard work. But that's the value in the process. And I often say, when we're working towards going to park run in March for some of the students who've never done a park run before. That's the aim. Winning will be getting on the start line, because we've done all the training behind it, and we can celebrate it. I've got one student who's done her first run outdoors on her own. I can recall she came back and said, "Ben, I went for my first run outdoors," and you know what? No one actually commented or was looking. I was like, how? Everyone's self-absorbed. We're all thinking about ourselves,
Have you coached anyone into getting over those fears about running in public? Because I think that's an issue with a lot of people, whether they've got anxiety generally or not. Like, even friends of my own say, I couldn't run outdoors. If I'm in a gym, everyone's exercising, but if I go to the park, there's people just on a walk, and they're going to look at me and think, oh, she's sweating, or why is she running? So I'm wondering if there's anything you've used to try and get people over that first hurdle of actually taking that first step outside and running.
Yeah, I think it's gradual exposure. So it starts maybe with running in a group together, and then little by little, it's getting people to run a little bit on their own, doing a little lap, with the knowledge that they're never that far away from be it me or the rest of the group, bit by bit. And it's just about helping people build that evidence base that actually, I did go for a little run there, or I did a little loop, and actually no one did stare at me or made any comment. And also we try to encourage a buddy system in the running club, try to get people to buddy up. And that also gives people accountability.
For turning up as well, I suppose.
For turning up as well. I think sometimes people are quite prepared to let themselves down.
Yeah.
And maybe that's
not so much others.
Not so much others. So when you can motivate yourself to go for your own run, you don't need anybody else. That's really powerful. And in our, sort of think about in our emotional lives, if you always wait to be in the right mood to do something, you might be waiting a long time. So there's great agency and power in just doing something sometimes, and then motivation will follow. But I think certainly barriers to participation, I think it's a lot of uncertainty, the not knowing. What you can do is, in terms of increasing control, people can run, but they know they've got a kind of an exit strategy. If they know how to, so they maybe do loops near the house, they've always got the option just to loop back and go home. Increase certainty, so you can maybe choose a route or a time of day when you maybe not as many people around.
So just about kind of setting it up as much as you can so that you're minimizing anything that's uncertain and
control the
minimising
controllables.
You went to a recent conference as well that's looking at sport at a, I guess, more professional level as well. Is there anything that you picked up from that you feel you can take back to your running group, or anything you learned that you think is useful to share?
It was looking at the role of psychotherapy in sport. I mean, there's been quite a lot of recent, high-profile sports people who've come out and spoken about their own mental health difficulties. But the world of sport, there's a particular dimension to it because it's elite. It's a brutal industry because ultimately it's about results. It's about winning. So how do you balance looking after the well-being of your players and promoting good mental health and valuing them as a whole person? Because they are people, they're people that play football, people who play tennis, and maybe we forget that sometimes. But also still have that relentless drive to win. And how do you balance the two? So it's a really interesting conference. It also discussed, we particularly used the examples of football academies because we've got development squads at 10 years of age. You might be spotted and put into development squads. Now the likelihood is you're never going to make the first team. There's value in the process of going to that and learning, but we'd be setting up our young people to fail if we weren't being very honest with them or managing their expectations. When I think about myself, and I know we've had conversations to this effect, I feel a real sense of urgency to see what I can achieve and push my limits. And when I fall short, there is disappointment. And I know we spoke after the big half last year, and I was in a lousy mood for a few hours. But when I take the wider perspective, I was talking about 2 minutes. When I think about when I've been most happiest as a runner, I'd actually, I would say it would be the ultra. And actually, I wasn't running quick whatsoever. I was a long time on my feet. But for that time, there was no expectation. I wasn't necessarily putting any pressure on myself. I was really just trying to, as I say, be present and enjoy it. And I never want to lose sight of that. Yes, there's things I want to achieve in running. I feel I'm in good health. But that should never be at the detriment to be it, running with friends or just enjoying running for itself. Autolectic.
It's funny you say that because I would say my biggest achievement has been my ultra, and I think most people wouldn't think that. But I think when you put so much pressure on a time in a race, it just makes the whole experience a little bit darkened, whether you achieve it or not, because there's so much pressure and anxiety. Whereas we turned up to the ultra, we had a nice day before, we had quite a relaxing morning, and I felt so strong afterwards because I did something that I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to do that morning, and that was a huge sense of achievement, and it drove me to think, when can we do the next one? And I spoke to people along the way, and it had more sense of community than a fast race would have. And I've met people on that ultra that I still kind of follow on Strava now and know what they're up to, whereas London Marathon, there's no one I've ever met on London Marathon course and had a chat with.
No, you've got the blinkers on, isn't it? Yeah. It's running your own race. No, there's something very lovely about that sort of ultra community. And that's what I hope for a lot of the, my running group at the Recovery College. If I can share with them a park run, And at the Recovery College, we're really mindful that we don't want to create dependency. So we're always thinking about how we can help people connect with their local community. So hopefully we'll go along to this park running. I can recall when we last went, the look on people's faces when they finished. Sometimes we get swept up. We do our 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathon, marathons, ultras, and you think, when's it going to stop? But everyone's got everyone's Everest will look different, which never ever diminishes anyone else's experience. It should be a wonderful day when we go down there in March.
I hope so. Given the last few weekends of weather, I'm not sure you'll have a beautiful park run day. But
I might be there on my own. We can hope. Fingers crossed.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I just want to end with a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'd like you to just give me one word that would describe how running has changed your life.
Liberating.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you.
To keep up to date with the latest episodes, follow along using the handle @marathonmedic or visit marathonmedic.com. Thanks for listening.